After studying this module, you shall be able to understand the derivation of demand curve for a competitive firm. You will be able to identify the short-run equilibrium of a competitive firm and industry and know about the short-run supply curve of a competitive firm and industry. A firm's demand curve gives the relationship between the demand for the output of that particular firm and the market price. The firm's demand curve is flat because every firm believes that it will be unable to sell anything at a price higher than the market price. Moreover, if a firm charges a price lower than the market price, then the firm would get the entire market demand and would soon be sold out, after which each of the other firms would be able to sell. Further, the firm can sell any amount of the homogeneous product at the ongoing market price. The firms in perfectly competitive market are thus price takers. The demand curve facing a competitive firm will be given by a horizontal line facing the quantity axis, as the firms are price takers and prices will not change for the change in output level.
Let us begin with the understanding of demand curve. Demand curve of any firm shows the maximum price that consumers are willing to pay for different levels of quantity. Under perfect competition, the firm's demand curve is perfectly elastic. That is, it is a horizontal line parallel to the quantity axis. The market demand curve, on the other hand, is conventionally downward sloping. To understand this distinction, it is essential to understand the difference between the market demand curve and the firm's demand curve. The demand curve for a firm in a perfectly competitive market varies significantly from that of the entire market. The market demand curve slopes downward, while the perfectly competitive firm's demand curve is a horizontal line equals to the equilibrium price of the entire market. The horizontal demand curve indicates that the elasticity of demand for the good is perfectly elastic. This further means that if any individual firm charged a price slightly above the market price, it would not sell any product. A strategy often used to increase market share is to offer a firm's product at a lower price than the competitors. In a perfectly competitive market, firms cannot decrease their product price without making a negative profit. Instead, assuming that the firm is a profit maximizer, it will sell its goods at the market price.
The market demand curve gives the relationship between the total amount of industry output demanded and the market price. The market demand curve is influenced by the consumer behavior, but the firm's demand curve is influenced by consumer behavior as well as other firms' decisions. Market demand curve is downward sloping as the consumers will buy more output only at a lower price. Here we can see the difference between the demand curves of a firm and industry for a perfectly competitive market. In figure A, DD represents the industry demand curve. It is downward sloping as the consumers will buy more output only at a lower price. The intersection of industry demand curve and industry supply curve yields the equilibrium market price as P star and equilibrium quantity sold as Q star, which represents the total quantity produced by all the firms taken together in the industry. The figure B shows the demand curve faced by a single perfectly competitive market. It is a horizontal line at P star facing the quantity axis, implying that the firm can sell any additional unit of output without lowering the price. As a result, when the firm sells an additional unit of output, the total revenue TR rises by a fixed amount which is equal to the price of the product. Therefore, the marginal revenue MR and the average revenue AR are equal to the price of the product. These figures illustrate how the intersection of market demand and supply curves of the industry determine the market price, which is taken as given by the firms. Thus, the firms become price takers.
A short-run competitive equilibrium is a situation in which, given the firms in the market, the price is such that the total amount the firms wish to supply is equals to the total amount the consumers wish to demand. In an exchange economy, a competitive equilibrium is Pareto efficient. In a competitive equilibrium, price is equals to short-run marginal cost, so no firm can sell an extra unit at a price that covers its short-run marginal cost. Short-run marginal cost is the market value of the variable inputs needed to produce the extra unit of output. So, in an equilibrium, it is not possible to sell another unit at a price that covers the market value of the inputs needed to produce that unit. If the market value of the variable inputs needed to produce an extra unit of output measures their social cost and the price at which a unit can be sold measures the social value of the unit, then in an equilibrium, the socially optimal amount of the good is produced. In the short run, some factors are fixed and some factors are variable. The presence of fixed factors distinguishes the short run from the long run. In the short run, the output per period can only be changed by changing the value of variable inputs, keeping the fixed factors constant. The profit maximization condition for a firm is to produce at the output level where the difference between TR and TC is maximum. In other words, MR should be equals to MC and steeper than MC at the point of intersection.
Now, having understood the demand curve, let's look at the equilibrium of perfectly competitive market in the short run. There are two approaches to it, total approach and marginal approach. According to the total approach, profit of a firm is maximized where the difference between TR and TC is maximum. According to the marginal approach, profit is maximized at the point where MR is equal to MC and MC is increasing after it. That is, MC is steeper than MR at the point of intersection. As the price remains constant in perfect competition, the average revenue is also constant. Thus, in perfect competition, MR is equal to price is equal to AR. Since MR equals price for the perfectly competitive producer, the short-run equilibrium occurs at the output level for which the MC is equal to price. The short-run profit maximizing condition for a perfectly competitive firm is thus MC equal to price. This condition implies that no firm has an incentive to deviate from charging price equal to marginal cost, which is same for every firm in the industry. If a firm charges a price more than its marginal cost, then it will lose all its consumers to its competitors as the products are homogeneous.
The firm will regain the market share only when it charges the price same as the marginal cost. On the other hand, lowering a price below the marginal cost will result in the firm producing a lesser quantity. This will lower the firm's profits. It might cross your mind that if all the firms simultaneously start charging a higher price, then all can have profits. But this scenario will not be sustainable because the total demand will be less than the supply and the firm will be left with unsold stock. Thus, every firm will have an incentive to lower the price and grab the entire market share. Therefore, the equilibrium situation where the firms would want to stay put will occur only at the level where MC is equals to P. The profit of a firm is defined as the excess of TR over TC. Profit as a function of Q is equals to TR as a function of Q minus TC as a function of Q. This could be written as profit as a function of Q is equals to P into Q minus AC into Q. Hence, profit as a function of Q is equals to Q bracket P minus AC bracket close. Thus, the excess of price over AC multiplied by the quantity gives the profit.
There are three cases to understand the level of profits accruing to a perfectly competitive firm in the short run. In the first case, if the price charged is same as the average cost of the firm, then the profits are zero for that firm. It is a no profit, no loss situation. In the above figure, price is same as the average cost at the point of equilibrium E. Thus, there are no positive economic profits for the firm. The second case is such, where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost at quantity level Q star and the price charged is P1 at equilibrium point E1. However, the average cost at Q star is P2, which is less than the price charged P1. The dashed area in the figure is the economic profit of the firm. It is the excess of price over average cost multiplied by the quantity. Thus, in this case, the firm is enjoying positive economic profits. In the final case, if the price charged is less than the average cost, then the firm receives negative economic profits. In the figure, the equilibrium is at E2, where marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue at quantity level Q star and price charged is P2. However, at the equilibrium level of output Q star, the average cost is P1, which is more than price, and therefore the firm is making losses as shown by the shaded area.
Let us understand what we mean by the supply curve. It is defined as the locus of the minimum price at which the firm is willing to sell different quantity levels. It is a graphic representation of the relationship between product, price and quantity of the product that a seller is willing and able to supply. Product price is measured on the vertical axis of the graph and quantity of the product supplied on the horizontal axis. In most cases, the supply curve is drawn as a slope rising upward from left to right, since product price and quantity supplied are directly related, that is, as the price of commodity increases in the market, the amount supplied also increases. This relationship is dependent on certain ceteris paribus, that is, other things remains equal conditions which remaining constant. Such conditions include the number of sellers in the market, the state of technology, the level of production cost, the seller's price expectations, and the prices of the related products. All these conditions are assumed to be constant. A change in any of these conditions will cause a shift in the supply curve. A shifting of the curve to the left corresponds to a decrease in the quantity of product supplied, whereas a shift to the right reflects an increase in the quantity of the product which is supplied by the seller.
Now let's understand the shape of supply curve for a competitive firm. Following two things should be considered before that. First, the least price at which the firm is willing to supply various quantities of the good should be considered. Second, the minimum price which the firm is willing to accept should be known. The firm will shut down business below this point. The initial equilibrium of a perfectly competitive firm in the given figure is at E1, where MR1 is equal to MC of the firm. The price is set at P1. As the price increases in the industry from P1 to P2, the MR curve shifts for an individual firm from MR1 to MR2, and the equilibrium shifts to E2. Similarly, as price increases to P3, the equilibrium for a firm shifts to E3. With the increase in the price level, the supply by an individual firm is increasing, as can be seen from the quantity axis. Increased production becomes profitable at higher price levels only. By looking closely at the figure, it can be seen that the firm is supplying according to the marginal cost curve. As price is rising, the firm is supplying along the MC curve. So, MC curve is in fact the supply curve of a competitive firm in the short run, as it identifies the most profitable output level at each possible price. But it is equally important to identify the minimum price at which the firm will be willing to supply at all. The MC curve above that level will be the supply curve for a perfectly competitive firm. If AR is less than AC, then the firm is making economic losses, but the firm should produce till the time the revenues are more than the variable costs of production. As long as AR is greater than AVC or TR is greater than TVC at the equilibrium output level, a smaller loss will be incurred if the production takes place. Thus, if the price is below AVC, the firm will shut down. The minimum of AVC curve is the shutdown point. That is, the firm will close down if the price is below the minimum of AVC, as no fixed cost will be covered then. As a consequence, the portion of MC curve which is above the minimum of AVC curve is the supply curve of the competitive firm. In the figure, E1 is the initial equilibrium for a competitive firm with price and quantity as P1 and Q1 respectively. As price falls to P2, the MR curve shifts to MR2 and the new equilibrium is E2. At E1, the firm was making economic profits, while at E2, the firm is earning enough to pay all its factors. If the price falls further to P3, then the quantity supplied falls again along the MC curve to Q3. At equilibrium point E3, the firm is making losses as the average revenue is less than average cost, but is covering the average variable costs as AR curve is still above the AVC curve. Therefore, the firm will remain in operation. However, when the price falls to P4, the AR curve touches the minimum of AVC curve, which means that the price is just sufficient only to cover the variable costs and none of the fixed cost is covered. Thus P4 is the shutdown point for the firm, as below P4, firm will be making more losses than to shut down. When price is equal to AVC, then no part of AFC is covered and the losses are minimized. Therefore, the bold red part of MC curve is the supply curve of a perfectly competitive firm, and below the price level P4, that is the minimum of AVC curve, the firm is unwilling to supply any quantity at all. Now let's look at the industry's demand and supply curves. Industry can be defined as all the firms taken together. A competitive industry faces a normal downward sloping demand curve, unlike the firm which faces a horizontal demand curve. It implies that all the firms taken together, or industry, faces the fear of losing sales if they increase the price level. The short-run demand curve for a competitive industry is shown in the figure. The short-run supply curve of a competitive industry is the horizontal summation of the supply curves of the firms. The figure shows the supply curves of the individual firms AMC1, BMC2 and CMC3. The third firm has a lower average cost curve. Therefore, its supply curve starts at a lower price level. At price below P1, the third firm's supply curve is the industry supply curve, as no other firm is willing to supply below that price level. Above P1, the quantity supplied by all the firms taken together is the industry's supply curve. For example, at price P2, the first firm supplies OQ1 quantity and second and third firm supply OQ2 and OQ3 quantity respectively. Thus the industry supply becomes OQ star, which is equal to OQ1 plus OQ2 plus OQ3. The industry supply curve is positively sloped, implying that a higher price induces the industry to supply more because of higher profit incentive. Each firm's MC curve slopes upwards because it reflects the law of diminishing marginal returns to variable inputs. Therefore, the short-run supply curve of industry too is determined by the law of diminishing marginal returns. The kink in the industry supply curve in the figure disappears when the number of firms is increased. Thus, the industry supply curve of a competitive market becomes a smooth upward sloping curve. The above derivation of the industry supply curve has been done on the assumption that it is a constant cost industry. That is, as the output expands, the cost of variable inputs remain constant. If, however, the cost of factors change, then the MC curve will shift for each firm and the industry supply curve derived above will not be valid. If the input prices are allowed to vary, then the supply curve will be steeper for increasing cost industry and flatter for a decreasing cost industry. This possibility is studied in the long run analysis. Having derived the supply and demand curves of individual firms and industry as a whole, let's look at the short-run equilibrium of the competitive industry. The supply curve of the competitive industry intersects the demand curve D1 at E1 and the price in the initial equilibrium is P1. All the firms face the price as given and the MR curve for an individual firm is shown by MR1 in the right hand side figure. the total quantity supplied by the industry is Q1 and the individual firm's supply is small q1. If the industry expands output to Q2 consequent to an increase in demand, then the equilibrium price jumps to P2. This shifts the MR curve upwards and thus the equilibrium quantity of firm 1 also increases to OQ2. In the above figure, the input prices are assumed to be unchanged due to expansion of output. That is, MC curve is same after the shift in MR. Let us now summarize what we have learned in this module. The market price in a competitive industry is obtained by the intersection of industry supply and demand curves, which is taken to be given by the individual firm. In the short-run equilibrium, an individual competitive firm supplies where the MC is equal to the price level. The rising portion of the MC curve above the minimum of AVC curve is the supply curve of an individual competitive firm. If the price falls below the minimum of AVC, then the firm shuts down its operations. The supply curve of a competitive constant cost industry is the horizontal summation of the supply curves of all the firms. The equilibrium of a competitive industry is represented by the intersection of demand and supply curves.